Have you ever noticed how easily people can control your emotions without even touching you? A single comment, a rude look, a bit of disrespect, and suddenly your mood changes. Your mind fills with anger. Your peace disappears. But here is the truth most people never realize. When someone can make you angry whenever they want, they are controlling you. One of the most powerful skills a person can develop in life is the ability to understand that not everything deserves a reaction. Most people go through their day reacting to everything around them. A small comment, a strange look, a disagreement, a rude tone, and immediately their emotions begin to move. Their mood changes, their mind becomes heavy, and suddenly their peace is gone. What they often fail to realize is that every reaction they give is a piece of their energy being handed away. Every time they respond with anger, frustration, or irritation, they are allowing someone else to influence their internal state. They are allowing outside noise to enter their mind and disturb their balance. Truth is that life is filled with countless situations where people will say things, do things, or behave in ways that are unnecessary, unfair, or even disrespectful. If a person decides to react emotionally to every one of these moments, they will spend most of their life feeling disturbed. Their mind will always be busy replaying arguments, imagining responses, or holding on to resentment. The more they react, the more power these situations gain over them. Their peace becomes fragile because it depends on how others behave. But when a person begins to understand that not everything deserves a reaction, something important begins to change. They start observing more than reacting. Instead of immediately responding with emotion, they pause, they notice the situation, they notice the words that were said, and they realize that many things people say are not important enough to deserve their mental energy. Some comments are simply noise. Some behaviors come from people who are frustrated with their own lives. Some opinions come from people who do not truly understand the situation. Reacting to every one of these things would only fill the mind with unnecessary weight. A person who chooses not to react to everything begins to experience a different kind of freedom. They no longer feel the need to defend themselves in every conversation. They no longer feel the pressure to correct every misunderstanding. They no longer feel the urge to respond to every negative remark. Instead, they become selective with their attention. They begin to treat their emotional energy as something valuable rather than something to be spent carelessly. This shift changes the way the mind works. When someone says something negative, instead of immediately responding, the mind quietly asks a simple question: does this actually matter? Is this situation important enough to disturb my peace? Is this person someone whose opinion truly affects my life? Very often, the honest answer to these questions is no. The moment that realization appears, the emotional reaction loses its strength. Many arguments that people engage in every day are completely unnecessary. They are driven by ego, by the need to prove something, or by the desire to have the last word. But when a person stops reacting to everything, they step outside of that cycle. They understand that some battles are simply not worth fighting. Some conversations are not worth continuing. Some negativity is not worth acknowledging. Over time, this approach creates a stronger and calmer mind. The person begins to move through situations with more stability. While others around them are reacting, arguing, and becoming emotional, they remain steady. They listen more carefully. They observe more clearly. And because they are not constantly reacting, they are able to choose their responses with greater awareness. This does not mean ignoring everything or allowing people to disrespect boundaries. It means understanding the difference between what truly matters and what is simply a moment of noise. It means recognizing that many situations lose their power the moment they are not given a reaction. The world is full of distractions that try to pull attention in different directions, and every reaction feeds those distractions. A calm mind learns to let small things pass without resistance. A careless comment, a minor disagreement, an unnecessary opinion, these things appear and disappear quickly when they are not fed with emotion. The person who understands this begins to carry a quiet strength within them. They realize that peace is not maintained by controlling others, but by controlling how much of their energy they choose to give away. Every reaction you give is a form of permission. The moment you react emotionally to someone's words or behavior, you are silently giving them influence over your inner world. Most people do not realize how much control they hand over through their reactions. A small insult can ruin their entire day. A disagreement can keep their mind busy for hours. A negative comment can stay in their thoughts long after the moment has passed. The reason this happens is not because the words were powerful, because the reaction gave those words power. When someone understands how human reactions work, they quickly realize something important. People often test others to see what affects them. Sometimes it is done intentionally, and sometimes it happens naturally. A person might make a sarcastic remark, criticize a decision, or question someone's ability. The moment they see anger, frustration, or defensiveness, they learn something valuable. They learn that this particular reaction can be triggered again. In a way, emotional reactions become like buttons that others can press. If someone discovers that at a certain topic always makes you angry, they now know exactly how to disturb your peace. If someone sees that criticism immediately puts you on the defensive, they understand how to control the direction of the conversation. When reactions are predictable, control becomes easy. The person reacting may believe they are defending themselves, but in reality, they are being guided by the emotions that someone else provoked. This is why emotional control is such a powerful form of independence. When your reactions are automatic, your emotions are no longer fully yours. They are being shaped by the behavior of others. Anyone who knows the right words can influence how you feel. A careless comment can disturb your mood. A disrespectful tone can trigger anger. A disagreement can lead to frustration. Slowly, your emotional state becomes dependent on the people around you. But when a person begins to control their reactions, the dynamic completely changes. Instead of reacting instantly, they create a small space between what happens and how they respond. In that space, awareness appears. Instead of anger rising automatically, they observe the situation. They notice the tone of the words, the intention behind them, and the emotional energy being presented. This pause prevents the other person from controlling the outcome. A person who cannot be easily provoked becomes very difficult to manipulate. Their emotions are no longer accessible to everyone around them. Words that once stirred anger now pass through their mind without creating the same disturbance. They begin to see comments and criticism as information rather than attacks. The mind remains steady because it is not constantly reacting to every stimulus. This kind of emotional discipline also changes the way people interact with you. When someone realizes that their attempts to provoke you no longer work, they often stop trying. The patterns that once created conflict begin to disappear because they no longer receive the reaction they depend on. Without a reaction, many negative behaviors lose their purpose. The energy of the situation fades because it is not being fed. At the same time, controlling your reactions does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending that nothing affects you. It means choosing how and when those emotions are expressed. Instead of allowing anger to appear instantly, you decide whether the situation truly deserves that level of attention. Instead of responding with frustration, you may choose calm silence or thoughtful words. The reaction becomes intentional rather than automatic. This awareness gives you ownership of your emotional life. Your peace no longer depends on how people behave. Their opinions, attitudes, and moods stop dictating your inner state. You recognize that reactions are a form of power, and power should not be given away carelessly. When reactions become deliberate instead of impulsive, emotional independence begins to grow. The ability to stay calm in situations that once triggered anger slowly becomes part of your character. People who once had the ability to disturb your mind begin to lose that influence because the buttons they used to press are no longer connected to automatic reactions. One of the most powerful realizations a person can have is understanding that most people's behavior has very little to do with you. When someone speaks harshly, acts impatient, or responds with negativity, the first instinct of many people is to take it personally. They assume the words were meant to attack them, disrespect them, or undermine them. The mind quickly begins creating stories about the situation. It starts asking questions like, why would they say that to me? Or what did I do to deserve this? But in reality, much of behavior people display is simply a reflection of what is happening inside their own minds. Every person carries their own struggles, frustrations, insecurities, and unresolved emotions. Some people are dealing with stress that no one else can see. Others are carrying disappointment, anger, or pressure from different areas of their lives. When these emotions build up inside someone, they often leak out in the way that person treats others. A short temper, an impatient comment, or a rude reaction can sometimes be nothing more than an overflow of internal tension. Imagine someone who has had a difficult day filled with problems and frustration. Their mind is already heavy before they even speak to you. When a small inconvenience appears, their reaction may seem exaggerated. They might raise their voice or respond sharply. To an observer, it may feel like the reaction was directed personally at them, but the truth is that the reaction was building long before that moment ever happened. The situation simply became the point where their internal pressure was released. When people fail to understand this, they carry unnecessary emotional weight. They assume that every negative comment is a personal attack and every disagreement is an insult. Their mind becomes trapped in trying to defend itself against things that were never truly about them. This creates endless tension because the world is filled with individuals who are struggling with their own emotions. But when a person begins to recognize that most behavior is rooted in personal pain or frustration, their perspective changes. Instead of immediately reacting with anger, they observe with a deeper level of awareness. They begin to see that a harsh tone might come from someone who is overwhelmed. A sarcastic remark might come from someone who feels insecure. An aggressive response might come from someone who lacks control over their emotions. This understanding does not excuse harmful behavior, but it removes the unnecessary burden of taking everything personally. When you stop assuming that every negative action is about you, your mind becomes lighter. You no longer feel responsible for the emotions that others are struggling to manage. Their anger remains theirs. Their frustration belongs to their situation. Their negativity becomes a reflection of their internal state rather than a measure of your worth. People who understand this develop a different way of responding to difficult situations. Instead of reacting with immediate anger, they pause and observe the emotional energy behind the behavior. They notice that someone who is calm and balanced rarely feels the need to insult others or create unnecessary conflict. When negativity appears, it often reveals more about the emotional condition of the person expressing it than about the person receiving it. This shift in perception creates emotional distance from unnecessary conflict. Words that once felt deeply offensive begin to lose their impact because intention behind them becomes clear. Instead of absorbing someone else's frustration, you see it as something they are struggling to carry themselves. The mind becomes less defensive because it no longer assumes that every negative interaction is an attack. As this awareness grows, patience begins to replace anger. Situations that once triggered strong emotional reactions start to appear smaller and easier to understand. The behavior of others becomes easier to observe without immediately absorbing the emotional energy behind it. The mind becomes more stable because it no longer reacts as if every harsh word is meant to harm. When you see people's actions as reflections of their internal struggles rather than personal attacks, the emotional pressure of daily interactions becomes much lighter. You move through conversations with greater understanding, recognizing that many people are simply navigating their own pain, their own confusion, and their own emotional battles that are invisible to everyone around them. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of strength. Many people believe that the strongest response in any situation is to speak louder, argue harder, or defend themselves immediately. They think that if they do not respond to every comment, every insult, or every disagreement, it somehow means they are weak. Because of this belief, people feel a constant need to react. They feel pressure to explain themselves, prove themselves, and respond to every negative remark that comes their way. But the truth is that constant reaction often creates more chaos than clarity. When emotions are high, words become weapons rather than solutions. In the heat of anger, people say things they do not truly mean. They speak quickly, react impulsively, and allow their frustration to guide their responses. One angry sentence leads to another. And before long, the conversation becomes an argument. The original issue becomes buried under layers of emotion, ego, and defensiveness. What could have been a small moment turns into a larger conflict simply because both sides feel the need to keep responding. Silence has the power to break that cycle. When someone expects a reaction and instead receives calm quietness, the entire dynamic of the situation changes. The energy of conflict often depends on two people feeding it. When only one person is reacting and the other remains composed, the intensity of the situation begins to lose its fuel. Without another voice adding anger or frustration, the emotional fire slowly weakens. Silence also gives the mind time to think. When people react instantly, they often speak before they fully understand what they are feeling. Their response becomes driven by emotion rather than awareness. But when a person chooses silence, even for a few moments, something different happens inside the mind. The immediate wave of emotion begins to settle. Thoughts become clearer. The person is able to observe the situation rather than being trapped inside it. In many situations, silence communicates more powerfully than words ever could. A person who does not react to provocation shows a level of control that is difficult to challenge. Others may attempt to push emotional buttons, expecting anger or defensiveness. But when those attempts are met with calm stillness, the message becomes clear without a single sentence being spoken. It shows that the person cannot be easily disturbed. This type of silence is not the silence of fear or avoidance. It is the silence of discipline. It is a conscious choice to protect inner peace instead of participating in unnecessary conflict. It is the understanding that not every comment deserves an answer and not every situation deserves emotional energy. When someone refuses to engage in pointless arguments, they are not surrendering their voice. They are simply choosing when their voice truly matters. Silence also allows a person to listen more carefully. In moments of disagreement, most people are not truly listening to each other. They are simply waiting for their turn to speak. Their mind is busy preparing the next argument, the next defense, the next explanation. But when someone remains silent, they gain the ability to observe the situation with greater clarity. They notice the tone of the conversation, the emotions behind the words, and the deeper meaning behind what is being said. There are moments in life when speaking is necessary and important, but there are also many moments where speaking only adds more noise to an already tense situation. Silence becomes a tool that protects emotional balance. It creates space between the impulse to react and the decision to respond. Within that space, calm thinking replaces emotional impulse. Over time, people who practice this discipline develop a presence that feels steady and grounded. Others begin to notice that provoking them is difficult because their reactions are not easily triggered. Arguments that once might have escalated quickly now lose momentum because they are not being fueled by emotional responses. Silence becomes a quiet form of authority, showing that control over one's emotions is stronger than the urge to win every argument or answer every challenge. Self-control is one of the rarest forms of strength a person can possess. Many people believe strength means being louder, more aggressive, or more dominant than others. They imagine power as the ability to overpower people, win arguments, or prove themselves right in every situation. But true strength is far more subtle than that. It does not always appear through force or confrontation. Often, the strongest person in a room is the one who has complete control over their own emotions. Emotions are powerful forces inside every human being. Anger, frustration, jealousy, pride, and fear can rise within seconds. When these emotions appear, they push the mind to react quickly. Words come out before they are carefully considered. Actions happen before the consequences are fully understood. Many conflicts, broken relationships, and regrets are created in these small moments where emotion takes control and awareness disappears. A person without self-control becomes a prisoner of these emotional waves. Their mood changes depending on what others say or do. If someone praises them, if someone criticizes them, they become defensive or upset. Their emotional state constantly rises and falls based on external situations. In this condition, they are not truly directing their own life because their reactions are being shaped by whatever happens around them. Self-control changes that dynamic completely. Instead of being carried away by emotions, a disciplined mind learns to observe them. When anger appears, the person notices it rather than immediately expressing it. When frustration rises, they recognize the feeling without letting it dictate their behavior. This ability to observe emotions without instantly reacting to them creates a powerful sense of stability. The difference between reacting and responding becomes very clear. A reaction is automatic and driven by impulse. It happens quickly, often without awareness. A response, however, comes from a place of thought and intention. It is chosen carefully rather than expressed impulsively. Self-control is the skill that creates space between these two things. In that space, the mind regains authority over what happens next. People who develop strong self-control are not easily shaken by small disturbances. They do not lose their balance when someone speaks harshly or behaves unfairly. While others might react with immediate anger or frustration, they remain steady. Their calmness is not the result of weakness, but the result of discipline. They have trained themselves to remain centered even when emotions try to pull them in different directions. This type of strength also protects a person from many unnecessary problems. A moment of uncontrolled anger can damage a relationship. A careless response can create tension that lasts for days or even years. Many people look back at situations in their lives and realize that a single moment of emotional reaction created consequences they wish they could undo. Self-control prevents many of these situations from ever appearing. Instead of reacting impulsively, the person pauses. They give their mind time to understand what is actually happening. They ask themselves whether the situation deserves a strong emotional response or whether it is simply a passing moment. This pause may only last a few seconds, but it completely changes the direction of the outcome. Over time, Self-control begins to shape a person's character. Others start to notice that they remain calm in situations where most people would become emotional. Their presence feels stable and reliable because their behavior is not constantly shifting with every emotional wave. People often trust and respect individuals who demonstrate this level of discipline because it shows maturity and awareness. The ability to control oneself is more powerful than the ability to control others. Trying to dominate or manipulate people requires constant effort and creates endless resistance. But mastering one's own emotions creates a form of quiet authority that cannot easily be challenged. When anger does not control your actions and frustration does not control your words, you begin to move through life with a sense of balance that many people never develop. Peace is one of the most valuable things a person can possess, yet it is often the first thing people give away without realizing it. Many individuals move through life allowing small situations, careless words, and the opinions of others to disturb their inner balance. A single negative comment can stay in their mind for hours. A disagreement can ruin their mood for the entire day. Slowly, their sense of calm becomes fragile because it depends on what is happening around them rather than what is happening within them. When peace is not protected, the mind becomes crowded with unnecessary tension. Thoughts begin to repeat conversations, arguments, and imagined responses. Energy is spent thinking about situations that cannot be changed and people whose behavior cannot be controlled. Instead of feeling focused and clear, the mind becomes heavy with irritation, resentment, or worry. Much of this emotional weight comes from giving too much importance to things that do not truly deserve that level of attention. Protecting your peace begins with recognizing how valuable your mental and emotional energy really is. Every day, your mind has a limited amount of focus and strength. When that energy is wasted on small conflicts, negative conversations, or pointless arguments, there is less left for the things that actually matter. Your goals, your creativity, your growth, and your relationships require clarity and calmness. A disturbed mind cannot move forward effectively because it is constantly being pulled backward by unnecessary distractions. Many people feel obligated to respond to everything they hear. They believe they must defend themselves against every criticism, explain themselves in every disagreement, or prove themselves right in every conversation. This constant need to respond creates a life filled with emotional noise. The mind never has the chance to rest because it is always reacting to something or someone. But protecting your peace requires a different mindset. It means becoming selective about what deserves your attention. Not every opinion needs to be challenged. Not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. Not every conflict needs to be continued. Some situations lose their power the moment you decide they are not important enough to disturb your calm. This kind of discipline does not mean ignoring reality or pretending that problems do not exist. It means understanding the difference between situations that require your energy and situations that only drain it. When something truly matters, when it affects your values, your boundaries, or your responsibilities, then your attention is necessary. But many daily irritations are temporary and meaningless in the larger picture of life. Protecting your peace also means creating healthy distance from constant negativity. Some environments, conversations, or individuals bring unnecessary tension into your life. When a person repeatedly creates drama, conflict, or stress, their presence slowly erodes emotional balance. Choosing to step away from these influences is not selfish or weak. It is an act of self-respect and self-preservation. The mind becomes stronger when it learns to filter what it allows inside. Just as you would protect your physical health by avoiding harmful substances, you must also protect your mental space from constant negativity. Words, attitudes, and emotional energy can affect the mind just as strongly as physical environments affect the body. As this awareness grows, daily life begins to feel lighter. Small disturbances no longer carry the same weight they once did. Situations that once triggered frustration now appear minor and temporary. Instead of being pulled into every conflict, you begin to move around them with calm awareness. People who truly protect their peace develop a quiet confidence within themselves. Their emotional state becomes less dependent on how others behave. They understand that their calmness is something valuable, and they are careful about where they invest their attention. Over time, this discipline creates a stable inner environment where focus, clarity, and emotional balance are no longer easily shaken by the unpredictable behavior of the outside world.